This episode was recorded prior to From the Closet being placed on hiatus. Any announcements concerning future episodes may not be 100% accurate. Hello, I'm Avery or Hazel or Kylie. You can just pick one, I don't care.
And I am Lily.
And welcome to the From the Closet podcast. Today we are covering Cruella. So obviously there will be spoilers for this movie. If you would like to avoid them, you will find a link in the description below to the Just Watch page for this movie, which itself will have links to every place you can rent, purchase, or stream this movie, with price comparisons for renting and purchasing. For us here in the US, it's available for streaming on Disney+. Also in the description, you will find a link to our Patreon where you can vote on future episodes of this show, as well as get access to episodes before they release, as well as early access to episodes of our sister show, Off the Shelf, which is about books and is exclusive to YouTube and Patreon. Speaking of future episodes, Lily, can you spin the wheel to determine what they can join us for later this week?
Yes, I can. Okay, I guess this is happening now.
What is?
West Side Story 2021.
Nice. Okay, so join us later this week for West Side Story 2021. We have already done the 1961 version, so you can feel free to check out that episode if you want.
You said this movie was better, right?
I mean, it got like tons of praise. I was seeing stuff about it everywhere.
Yeah, so did the Blade Runner.
Moving on. Okay. Also in the description, you'll find a link to Anchor.fm, which is now Spotify for podcasters, which itself will have links to every platform this podcast is on, as well as links to our Instagram and Twitter, where you can be notified when we release new episodes. But with all that being said, please get out if you would like to avoid spoilers, because we are going to start talking about the movie now. Okay, so we watched 101 Dalmatians, and I did not like that movie. I found it frustratingly boring, and like that was just my personal stance on it. So when I saw the trailers for this movie all over my fucking YouTube ads, and the trailers were shit, like I'm being honest here, like, they had one trailer that was just the scene where the Baroness is talking to Cruella, and it's like, you look familiar. Oh, I look stunning. I don't know about familiar, and that's like literally the entire trailer. And I'm like, you're not enticing me to see this movie at all. You're not even doing anything. I was a little enticed
when I saw that trailer.
I don't know. Like, to me, that trailer did nothing. And I'm like,
to be fair, that trailer just makes like this exists. It was like interesting, I guess.
Yeah. Now, that said, while I did find 101 Dalmatians boring, this movie is a little bit different. This movie frustrates me because it is so close to being good, and I think the thing that holds it back is the fact that it's tied to 101 Dalmatians when it doesn't need to be.
Really?
This reeks of an original story that was changed to be tied to an existing franchise. That is 100% what this feels like to me.
I don't feel that at all.
I mean,
there's actually not a lot of
there's like nothing here that needs 101 Dalmatians in order for this story to work. Like, the three dogs that the Baroness has they don't even have to be Dalmatians for this story to work. The main character's name does not need to be Cruella. Like, this feels like it could have been a legitimately good movie on its own, but the studio execs were like, no, tie it to an existing franchise because we want more money. Like, that's what I feel.
No, I do not. Actually, I kind of feel like the opposite. I honestly feel like, I mean, everything was built around Cruella's backstory. And this is just, her backstory with very little ties to 101 Dalmatians. So, of course, it doesn't. Uh, you could make a story without it, sure, but that's not the story that they wanted to tell.
Okay, well, let's analyze it from the lens of it being connected to 101 Dalmatians. Cruella isn't supposed to be a villain that you can sympathize with whatsoever. She's supposed to be a cartoonishly evil character with, like, no doubt, no room to sympathize with her point of view at all. And on top of that, she hated dogs. Not just Dalmatians, she hated all dogs.
That is
So,
true. And I'm going to
so
point
like,
that, and I guess in your landscape that makes a lot of sense. However, I'm actually going to point to something else. Something else that they've done. Maleficent. Because it is in remarkably around the same style, giving the villain a backstory, but something that they did in Maleficent was they didn't make her evil. And I think that's the same trend in this movie.
see, the
Because
thing
while we
is,
never actually seen the main movie of 101 Dalmatians, we can assume that the main event, unless she gets old and bitter, never happened in her life. Because this is a completely different character that's based around the original story, like Maleficent.
the thing is, okay, for starters, I haven't seen Maleficent.
Mm.
And I had thought that you hadn't either. And that was like why you wanted to do that movie so bad, and unfortunately we can't. Um,
No, I've seen it. I've never seen the sequel though.
yeah, it's weird to me that there's a sequel, but yeah, whatever. I mean, the other thing to me that kind of irks me a bit is like,
Hmm.
if this was supposed to be like connected to 101 Dalmatians at all, then why is it that like there's this whole fashion fashion drama aspect to this movie when like fashion was never a part of Cruella's character in the original movie whatsoever. Like she had
But
a
it
dog
was.
fur coat, but that was about it.
I mean, fashion was a part of the original story. That's the reason why she wanted the Dalmatians. She was making the coats to, being sold.
I got the impression that she was making shit for herself in that movie.
I mean, that, she was like a fashionista. This was her business, making Dalmatian fur coats.
I don't know. To me, like this could have been an original story. This didn't need to be tied to 101 Dalmatians at all. And I feel like it would have been better for it because it makes the character feel that Cruella in this movie and the Cruella in 101 Dalmatians, they do not feel similar to me at all. And I
And
think
I
that's
will,
the
um,
problem.
and it's like, it's kind of like the Maleficent movie, though less extreme. I mean, they basically just made Maleficent from villain to anti-hero.
Yeah.
The
In
events
this
still
movie,
happen, but then suddenly, apparently, she starts caring about Aurora. Shrug.
yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see if we ever get around to being able to cover that movie.
But
We'll see how I feel about it.
I do wonder because around that time when these movies were being made, I have a theory that it was around the time where Disney was experimenting with a lot of sympathetic villains.
I mean, this movie I think came out last year or in the last 3 years, something like that.
Let me just check. Hmm. Actually, yeah, I always forget how this movie is um newer than I remember. Yeah, it's 2021. So
Okay,
I guess
yeah.
this is
So
around the era of no villains.
yeah, I mean, Disney tried doing sympathetic villains quite a bit. Um, well,
Then maybe that's where Maleficent is based, but I don't have any basis, so I'm just gonna look it up.
but like I genuinely do feel like it's a lot better when you do have a sympathetic villain because like when you have a villain who's just a villain for the sake of being a villain and you can't really get any vibe for their motivations at all, I'm not interested in your story. When you have no villain, sometimes that works really well, and sometimes it really fucking doesn't. Sometimes a story needs a villain to work,
Hmm.
and your movie suffers from it not existing.
Um, Actually, there's Pia. Okay, how should I explain? You don't have a problem with non sympathetic villains. You have a problem with not motivated villains because there is actually it's funny. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish made me realize there is situations where you can have a villain with motivation but with no sympathy.
No, like I'm not talking about the villain themselves is able to like have empathy. I'm talking about when we can understand the villain's motivations. That's
Yeah.
what you would call sympathetic.
Well, here, like there's a villain. I'm not gonna name him, but that is so unsympathetic. Like he is the definition of evil just to be evil. But what he's doing, his motivations are clear. What he's doing and why he's doing it is clear as day. It's like Iron Man. I don't feel any sympathy for him. Sorry, not the Iron Man villain. I feel no sympathy for him, but you know why he's doing it. He's doing it because he wants money in this capitalist society.
Well, then, like, the word you're looking for is empathy. But, yeah, anyway, regardless, I don't know. Like, to me, this movie could have worked really well if it was just a fashion drama and cut, uh, they cut the 101 Dalmatians connections. I feel like this movie could have stood really well on its own. But I don't know. That's my take. I feel like the 101 Dalmatian stuff hurts it more than it helps it.
I mean, I feel like it added nothing and it gained nothing from it. If you get what I mean.
Yeah. Now, one
I mean,
other
it's
thing
just
that
hmm.
there
At
there is
least
one other thing that I think hurts this movie, um, and like
hmm.
holds it back from being legitimately good. There is way too much fucking goddamn narration in like the first 30 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that it lined up and actually became a good movie later on, and to parts where I actually genuinely enjoyed the movie. But there was a lot of narration at the beginning.
Yeah, like it was to the point where I was like, oh no, are all my fears about this movie going to be right? Thankfully, no, not all of them. It did pick up in the second half, and it was legitimately fun to watch for a while, especially when Artie started showing up on screen. Artie, but I think we can both agree Artie is the best aspect of this movie.
Who's that again?
Artie, the guy who owned like the store that she kept going to.
Second best thing. I feel like my favorite thing about the movie was like the little tiny dog that just kept helping in heist.
That was whatever to me. It was something that like I don't know. I'd seen animals helping out in heists like a million times.
I think that's true, but also the fact that he just had like an eye patch for some reason.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
saw
like I
that.
don't know.
Oh, and also the fact that these dogs are apparently immortal. Because, like, at least 15 years have passed by from, like, the youth to, present day. And those dogs are still around. And still active, too. Like, they're running around, full of energy. At the very least, those Dalmatians. Because Dalmatians don't have, like, the bigger the dog is, tends to have, like, a little bit of shorter lifespans as well.
Yeah, I don't know too much about like that kind of stuff. What I do know is that like I know some people who have had a dog for well over 15 years and the dog is still like running around and being active and stuff.
I
Although
mean, to be fair, we
I
don't. I feel like the most unrealistic one is the three Dalmatians. Not only we don't know the age when we first see them in the flashback, and then we don't. And at least 15 years go by. That's around the age of the Dalmatian.
I mean we also don't necessarily know that they are the same ones, but ultimately I don't
That's
think it
yeah.
matters.
Though, okay, this is just for confirmation. They did use CGI dogs, right? Or are they real dogs?
I I mean if I'm being honest, I think most movies tend to use CGI dogs whenever they need a dog to do something specific. Because
I see.
like it's a lot more difficult to get a dog to act in multiple takes because they don't just shoot everything all in one take because this isn't Bolt. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, like
Um.
I don't know. Like I would suspect they were CGI.
Actually, I heard something about like real dogs, like because they do use real dogs quite a bit, but when they have to do like a serious scene, they have to use CGI tails because the tail will just be wagging the entire time.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases where you can use a real dog, especially when you don't need them to be doing anything super specific. You just need them to be in the scene. Um, but like there are times where you need the dog to do something specific for the story to work, or
Yeah.
to improve the shot or whatever. And at that point, you have to use CGI. And then, like what you were just talking about with the tails wagging, sometimes you have to use CGI to prevent that from catching on the camera because it doesn't work in the story.
Um. But it's interesting. So yeah, I actually. But it's one of the main things I was puzzled through this movie was if they're rewriting the story of Cruella to be not a dog murderer in the future. And
I mean,
honestly, I still don't know.
honestly, having watched the movie, I don't see this version of Cruella being a dog murderer.
While I was gonna say, like, agree with you there, there's another thing about I remember about that movie, 101 Dalmatians. She is old. I mean, very old.
Oh, and before someone comes in and never mind that no one watches the podcast. But before someone comes in and says something like, she literally said she would murder the Baroness's dogs in this movie, she also, like, a
Didn't.
few minutes later, like, says that she went a bit mad and that she was sorry for, like, how she acted and shit, and she also fucking didn't murder the dogs.
Yeah, no, if she was gonna murder the dogs, then the dogs would be dead. But the dogs didn't die.
Yeah, and
Also,
she also said she was gonna kill, like, the Baroness in that scene, and she didn't end up doing that either.
actually, I love in the scene later where it's like, I'm not gonna kill her unless I really, really, really have to.
Yeah,
And I guess,
one of my favorite exchanges in the movie was like,
hmm,
when Cruella had gone to the store where Artie, the store that Artie owned, and was like, "Oh, join me for a night of blah 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 and possible death," and he's like, "I'm not sure about that last one," and she's like, "Oh, it won't be you," and he's like, "Count me in."
okay, yeah, that's probably one of my favorite exchanges in the movie.
Yeah, like,
But I also love how, like, the people that were following her, and while they were easily persuaded, they did actually, disapprove of the actions that Cruella did in the 2/3 part of the movie.
yeah.
And,
So,
to see that
uh,
mellow out.
yeah, I genuinely thought it was like, okay, I genuinely thought we were not going to get the apology scene between her and uh, the two guys, because I thought this was going to be like, I thought they were actually going to take what I was legitimately enjoying and turn it into the actual origin story for her. Um, but they didn't go that route.
Hmm.
And I'm really glad the apology scene happened.
I swear, like, this movie is like half, um, the drama of the clothes line, fashion, and half a heist movie. But that's a little bit of
Yeah,
both.
kind of, yeah. I we got to talk about the twist near, like, the big twist in the movie where it's revealed that, like, the Baroness is actually Cruella slash Estella's mother. When
Which at
that
first I
twist
thought,
came up,
hmm,
when that twist came up, I was not sure how I thought about it, and I'm still not quite sure how I feel about that twist.
the more I think about, like, I was around the same way when it happened, but the more I think about it, the more it just makes sense. Cruella's mother, used to work for her and then stopped. Also, that necklace, that used to be, that was stolen too.
I'm not saying it doesn't work in this story. I'm just saying, like, it's weird that like there was a twist this big, like,
Oh, that late in the
it,
movie?
yeah, it's like, what the hell? The movie kind of drops this on you so nonchalantly,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
it's her reaction after the fact that kind of does different things, but it's like, I don't know, this the way the twist was delivered feels a bit weird to me.
That I agree with. Though I feel like what you said, everything after it kind of makes it, her being shocked, everyone around her being shocked. Um, it kind of just makes sense why they did, because just get the twist over with, and then you can the real thing is the fallout. That's what they wanted
Yeah.
to focus on, is the fallout of the twist.
And regarding the whole thing of like Cruella supposedly being like Cruella being a cartoonishly evil villain in 101 Dalmatians, it's
Hmm.
like there is a character in this movie who is just cartoonishly evil, and it's her fucking mother.
Cartoonishly evil breeds cartoonishly evil. What can you say?
But I don't feel like Cruella or Estella, whatever,
Hmm.
is cartoonishly evil, at least in this movie. And
Maybe
I feel like that's
101
why.
Dalmatians is the timeline where she wasn't abandoned and raised to be more cartoonishly evil than the Baronesta.
Yeah, that's even more terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. But she is cartoonishly evil, but I actually did really like the Baronesta as a villain.
Just
She
Baroness,
is,
but
yeah, but she is wrong in every way. Well, okay, maybe not some ways, because but most of the ways she is wrong.
yeah, it was
And
wild.
but you know what she wants? She wants the world. She wants the popularity, and try and make sure that popularity doesn't get backstabbed. She's doing everything to protect herself. She is the number one to her. God protect
Yeah,
the number one.
she does everything to protect herself except for looking around before pushing someone off of a fucking cliff.
You know, I mean, if the dogs just killed her, just did their freaking orders, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
I
But,
mean, still, like
ooh,
she wouldn't have died regardless. If that had happened, because she had a parachute in her skirt, apparently.
yeah, can save your life. Let's be honest, that's something fucking Agent Carter would have.
I I actually don't remember if she ever wore a skirt anytime we saw her.
But if she had to, there would always be a parachute.
Maybe.
It's like if
I
Agent
mean,
May wore a skirt.
except we did see Agent May wear a skirt.
But are we sure there wasn't a parachute in there? Or like a gun?
Are we sure there wasn't what?
I said, are we sure there wasn't a parachute in there? Or a gun?
I mean, I can be fairly certain there wasn't a gun because she always says, if I need a gun, I'll take one.
The parachute idea is still there, though.
Possibly, but I doubt it because she was trying to lay low and relax.
That's impossible for her.
It may be impossible, but it doesn't mean she wasn't trying. But
But
yeah, like I
yeah,
don't know.
she was carrying a skirt, which I love the final line in that scene, which is, and you can always expect an evil person to do something evil. She was betting on that she would be flying off that cliff. So instead of having to murder her, she was accused of a murder.
Yeah, which
Which
is
I
just
find
crazy.
quite poetic.
It's kind of funny, honestly. And like when she was trying to convince the crowd who literally just watched her push someone off a cliff, you just get the feeling of this is pathetic.
Because it is.
Like,
But I like it. I like how pathetic it is.
yeah, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's just like,
Yeah.
wow, like this is how pathetic this person is. Like, oh,
Did I mean she truly reached new lows that day. They weren't new. But still, they were lows. And I think she just couldn't fathom losing.
yeah, it's that unbelievable ego.
I mean, there were so many witnesses there.
Yeah, like I don't think I've seen a character with this much ego since Bill Cipher, probably.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, actually, um, Escanor from Seven Deadly Sins.
I don't know. I feel like Escanor has less of an ego than Bill Cipher.
Hmm. I guess. I mean, Escanor has lines like, "I'm sorry, I couldn't stand anyone looking beneath me, so I went up here to look beneath you." Like he has shit line. He has lines like that. God, I
And
love
then,
that
like,
ego character.
I mean, but then, like, Bill Cipher, like, loses despite the ability to see an infinite, like, amount of futures. So, like,
Couldn't have seen that
he
future.
doesn't think. I mean, he probably could have if he wasn't sitting there, like, thinking that there was no possible way for the humans to beat him.
That's true. But I mean, I guess with a lot of these ego niches villains, that's their downfall is their ego.
Yeah. Egomaniacs, they always lose because their ego gets the best of them. I actually kind of want to see a villain who's an egomaniac, but they don't lose because of their ego. They lose because they're just so thoroughly outclassed in terms of like power or skill or whatever. I
Hmm.
think that would be so funny.
There's some Columbo villains like that. Which, by the
But
way, I've
yeah, I don't
recently been
know.
getting into Columbo, but that's irrelevant.
Another thing I want to point out about this movie, and it's not really a thing, a flaw with this movie in particular, it's more something I
Hmm.
want to throw at Disney's live action studios. You're using one way or another way too much. Like,
Oh yeah,
Hocus Pocus
absolutely.
2. Hocus Pocus 2 and this movie came out very close to each other, and they both had this song. What the fuck, Disney? You might want to try using some other songs.
Oh, speaking of that, I remember a lot of licensed songs for this movie as well. Which not a bad thing per se. But I'm always like uneasy when it's like, oh, here's another fucking licensed song. Because sometimes they can be good and sometimes they're not. Like the Mario movie. That was unneeded.
What did you expect? It was Illumination.
Hmm. I mean,
To
everything
be
else
fair,
about that movie was,
to
yeah.
be fair, I still haven't seen it. So,
I like the
you know.
movie, but like the 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 license song, the license tracks were just out of place.
Yeah, I feel like for a Mario movie, it shouldn't have licensed music at all, especially considering Nintendo doesn't like licensing music. That's why Wii
Yeah.
Music was pretty much all public domain stuff. Um,
Um. Kind of weird, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
there's actually a lot of other music in that movie, like the original soundtrack, which is based off of Mario music. That shit was good. That was fire. So why this? Why the license shit?
I don't know. But yeah, personally, just to close up everything, I feel
Yeah.
like this movie is really close to being good, but the narration and the 101 Dalmatians connections kind of hold it back for me. And if you haven't seen the movie and you hear me saying it's the 101 Dalmatians connections, and you're thinking that's all this movie is, no, no, it's not. In fact, the 101 Dalmatians stuff is very, very little of the movie. It's just enough that it holds it back for me.
I'll be honest though, and I'm not going to say that even has much of a connection to 101 Dalmatians. Because if you watch this movie without even knowing 101 Dalmatians existed, you probably won't even know. You still wouldn't know about 101 Dalmatians being existed. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
like that's that's kind of what I'm getting at though. It's like this movie has so little of 101 Dalmatians in it that I feel like you could have just gone the extra mile and cut all of it out.
Not a flaw for me though. But other than that, with that closing statement, you want me to get into critic ratings?
Yeah.
We have that's wait. Why is Maleficent's rating so low? Anyway, Cruella is what I'm actually supposed to be reading today. IMDb gives it a 7.3 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 75%, and 86% of Google users like the movie.
All right, what about the Rotten Tomatoes audience
Let's
score?
see if you're able to get. Oh, hey, it loaded up pretty. What the fuck? Okay, then. So, wow. Sorry, it's just that difference. So, like I said, 75% on like the critics. The audience score is a 97.
I mean, I'd still say both of those are fairly high, which means that, like, the way I see it, when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes scores, like, if both the critics and the audience scores are fairly high, then I generally will say that, according to the consensus, it's a good movie. And I'll recognize that I'm probably in the minority for saying that I think the 101 Dalmatian stuff holds it back, but I'm going to give this a 6.8.
You couldn't have gone 1 point higher.
No, I couldn't.
Sad. But as for me, 7.7.
All right. Well, you can join us later this week for West Side Story, the 2021 version. And with all that being said, I've been Avery, that's been Lily, and we will be seeing you.